models. So I've been looking at models like Whistler in Canada, where they have the whole city is very walkable and everyone parks on the outside of it, and there's just no cars on the inside of the city. So everyone is just walking from business to business, restaurant to restaurant. They get to interact. There's all kinds of stuff going on in the plazas all the time. And I just keep thinking about how wonderful that would be and how much more community-centric that would be, how much we would not be dependent on fossil fuels if that were the case, how much more space that would free up, like if we didn't need residential streets, if we didn't need parking lots and driveways. We are looking at probably serious food insecurity based on all of the bread baskets of the world collapsing at the same time because of climate change in the next 5 years. So we need to get really serious about food security, and we don't have room to grow the food to support our whole population right now. But if we start working really seriously about transitioning streets into greenways and allowing that for space to grow food, we can really make a difference in food security and making sure that we are more self-sufficient than we are right now, because we won't be able to import as much as we used to. I also think about all the markets that we could have, all of the events we could have, how we would just necessarily need to make more walkable communities because we can't drive, or we have to call a Lyft, or things like that. And I would really look forward to having significantly less pollution and significantly less disease related to pollution, like asthma and other chronic disorders that have been documented as being caused by diesel fuels and other things. So, and in general, I really support the biking community, the pedestrian community, the public transit systems, and I just would, as a government official, really like to shift away from car-centric models.
I hear people say often that our system is broken. I disagree with this statement, not because I think our capitalist system is ethical or that it has the capability of providing prosperity for all of us, but because our system is functioning exactly as intended. You're born into this world and almost immediately fed stories of nationalism and American exceptionalism. You're taught a cherry-picked and white supremacist lens history of our country. You're pushed through grade school and forced to endure mind-numbing courses until you reach the age where you're finally given the ultimatum of going to college or going straight to work. If you go to college, you saddle yourself with tens of thousands of dollars of student loans. If you go to work, you're met with low wages, long hours, and overwhelming rent and bill payments. You could join the military straight out of high school or get your college paid for by joining the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, but both of these require putting your life on the line to do what again? To protect our economic interests abroad. If you choose to not participate in this rigged system, stressing yourself out for some green paper and some numbers in your checking account, then you will not be able to make rent. You'll quickly be evicted, you'll be on the streets, fall into despair, and possibly turn to substance to ease the pain. As we've seen recently in our city, you're now liable to get arrested if you live in a tent or are caught using substances in the streets. Once arrested, you face jail time, which along with eviction and houselessness are the key tools of fear the ruling class uses to keep us in line. The law enforcement officers are there to enforce these rules just to make sure we know where we stand. If I could change something about our society, it would be to abolish capitalism. Until we move forward as a race beyond this exploitative system, we will continue to have houselessness, drug addiction, and climate crises. If we identify and dismantle this system, we'll be free to create a more equitable society capable of providing for everyone's material needs. We must end capitalism before it ends us.
All right, well, I'm getting a little more esoteric here, I guess. But when I was thinking about what I would change about how humans live, I immediately went to time scale. I think we often operate on time scales that aren't really conducive to addressing problems. So for instance, Sarah's story earlier about, when a person's feeling suicidal, moving out of thinking about the moment and taking it on a larger time scale. If we talk about environmental issues, the problems with like future discounting, and I want to talk about arable soil loss. These things all look different when we just shift the time scale. And I think, we see in politics that there's a real problem of only being able to look at 4 or 6 years or however long. And a lot of problems are best addressed at a 10 or a 20-year time scale. I think if we step back far enough, we actually have a lot in common society-wide. If we take a 500-year view we're almost all hoping for the Star Trek The Next Generation outcome. You know, it's only when we get caught up in like the moment that these little percentage changes start to feel like serious fights. You know, when we look back on it after a century or two, all of this is just going to look like inevitable tension during an inevitable change. So I think adjusting to most appropriate timescales, if we could somehow master that as a species, it'd really pay off for all of us.
Thanks for the question. I like challenges, so I picked a big one, and that's ending and bridging the political and cultural divide in this country, this state, and in this community. It's been increasingly pronounced in recent years, including right here in Portland. And I think this change would dramatically improve our quality of life in several ways. Improve civil discourse. We would discuss issues with the dignity that was discussed in the first question and respect for one another as we listen to diverse views. We would have stronger communities. Reducing polarization would help rebuild social bonds within our neighborhoods and within our city. It would increase community engagement, volunteerism, and a stronger sense of shared purpose. We'd even have more effective governance. All you have to do is look at, if you want to look at an example of political divide, city and county, and how they do or do not coordinate on issues like houselessness. It's one argument over another because people on one side or the other or both are not listening to one another and considering the ideas that are being offered by other people that might or might not be better than their own ideas. It would also allow us to address issues like infrastructure issues, education, public health. And finally, exposure to diverse viewpoints in a constructive manner would help people develop greater empathy and understanding for those with different backgrounds and beliefs.
All right. So yeah, esoteric. That's kind of the way I went to. I think if we could change the assumption that we need constant population growth to thrive as a society, that would make a huge difference. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean eliminating capitalism. Maybe it does. It would definitely reform how we think about it if we do keep it. But basically, we need, Earth is close to, or we have passed population carrying capacity. There's the natural tendency to reduce birth rates. We've seen it all over the place. People keep asking why. I'm like, well, look around. Why do you think? We have a choice in this. But if we took away that assumption, instead of saying we have to have more people, we have to keep growing, we could say, hey, how do we thrive? How do we make enough for everybody with what we have? Why can't we, why can't we just be happy with what we have? Why can't we make it so everybody has enough without increasing our population? So I think just eliminating that barrier will open up people's mindsets and we'll come up with creative new solutions, and we can live and prosper and be happy together. This is kind of like a fundamental tenet of sustainability. It's not that you stay the same, you continue to grow and evolve and change, but you do it in a sustainable way. So it's a new era. Vote for Sarah.
Now we're going to go to Mike.
All right. So if I could change something, I think I'm going to go big picture here as well. I've spent the better part of my career focused on learning about and working in media and broadcasting. And, I love how the advent of technology over the past 20 plus years has done a lot to bring us together. Being able to video phone and chat with friends and family, around the country and around the world has really brought us to a hyper local level in this big world and big planet that we live on. And this is all good. But the advent of technology has done a lot in our polarization and actually taking us away from each other and really connecting on a human level. And there's that pattern. We're talking about dignity is about seeing each other on a human level. So, if I could go big picture and take all of the knowledge that we have now, but go backward 25 years and start the technology roller coaster over again so that we can see how it's actually been a tool of manipulation for all of us, and it's done a really great job of being a tool at dividing us. And I think we all have the ability to see it for what it is, move forward, and find ways to understand that there's a lot that we're going to disagree about and may never come to consensus on. But let's put some of that aside and start working on the things that we know that we do agree on, and start rebuilding and working on improving our society for all of us on the things that we do agree on. So technology is wonderful, but it's also been a tool for dividing us. I think we need to move forward knowing what we know now.
So at first I hated this question, and then I loved the question. I've lived and worked in a lot of different countries around the world, and most of them have been either in the midst of or recovering from some kind of crisis or violent conflict. And every country I've been in has been different, but there has been one theme in every place I have been, and that is persistent and systemic marginalization, exclusion, and oppression. And so if I could change one thing about our society, I would rid the world of exclusion and oppression, because it not only is it morally right, but marginalization is the biggest threat to the stability of our society. I lived in Nigeria during the height of the Boko Haram crisis, and Boko Haram was a violent extremist group really ravaging the northeast of the country. And when I first got there, one of the things we wanted to discover was what is appealing about this group? Why are people joining it? So we hired a local research firm to ask people in the group that question. And what we heard back from them was the government is corrupt, the religious leaders are corrupt, the community leaders are corrupt, we have no future in this system, and the only answer is to burn it down. And that is the end of oppression and marginalization and exclusion. When the system doesn't work for people, when their voices aren't heard, when their participation is not rewarded, they will find a way to make their voices heard. And it's not going to be through democratic processes like voting or showing up at town halls. The end game of oppression is coups and war and terrorism. And Portland is not a war zone, but I've seen these dynamics at work here. We know the racist history of our city and our state. We know how they have systemically destroyed historic Black communities like Albina and Vanport. And I really believe that charter reform is part of the answer because it's designed to be more accountable and responsive. And I want to be a part of making that happen because it's right, but it's also what our city needs for its stability.
I think there might be one more wish in this genie's bottle here. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if we could just flip the switch on one thing, I think for me it'd be removing the billionaires who have a vested interest in kind of validating the existing capital structures, cost structures, markets, whatever you have them that require the ongoing fossil fuel infrastructure that is ultimately ruining our planet. And that is getting in the way of the very rapid scale of deployment that we need to do to even catch up to maybe the second or third best case scenario. So that would be the kind of utopian vision, but we don't live in that world, right? And so I think what I'd like to offer here while I've got the mic is that as desperate as we all feel, as kind of sort of bleak as it all seems out there, I'm looking at folks who are here on a Saturday. It seems kind of nice outside, and you want to listen to see how we might think about changing some things. And so that tells me there's organizing capacity in this city. There's organizing capacity in Oregon, and there's still some hope that we can change some things. And so I think there's a lot of people in Portland. There's a narrative that says, "Oh, everyone's given up on Portland. Oh, Portland is a dumpster fire." I reject that. I'm looking at hope here, and I think what we need to do is say, look, let's build the administrative capacity we need to build to execute on the mission that we have, which is, go big on climate, go big on affordable housing, build walkable cities, and kind of heal our community, because that's what's going to save us, right? It's going to be us participating on a daily basis, using the technology that we already know how to do, by the way. We don't need to wait for future technology to save us. We have it right now. We don't need to create new financial instruments to finance it. We have it right now. We just need to get ourselves organized. Thanks.
I want to share a story with everyone. Back in the early 2000s, I used to be a beer man. I would work at the Rose Garden and at Civic Stadium, and I would sell beer. Get your beer here, ice cold beer. And I'd walk up and down the stadium stairs, right? And I'd sell beer. So I was working at the Rose Garden one day working on a Blazer game. And I'm down there by the court. And just that year, I had started to get involved. This is 2003. I started to get actively involved in the Democratic Party here in the county level, at the Multnomah County Democratic Party as an activist. And I'm working, I'm sweating, I'm just sweating, I'm selling beer, I'm schlepping beer. And I'm down there by courtside, and who of all people, Congresswoman Darlene Hooley recognized me, stood up, Moses, hi! She waved at me. And I'm sweating and everything, and she treated me with dignity and respect. And to this day, that left a huge impression on me about what leadership is all about. So, because it relates to having empathy for all people in all positions, listening, learning, what are they coming from? Having that fundamental respect for all parts of our society. And I learned it from Congresswoman Darlene Hooley that day, because she gave it to me. And so my goal here would be to that, if we could have empathy for all, understanding of all, it's a fundamental thing, but it has to start from the top. And as your city councilman, you will have my respect and empathy. Thank you.
Well, if I could change one thing about society, it would be the abolishment of our two-party system. It is not working, it has not worked for decades, and it is failing us miserably. All it does is it pits us against each other, and we become vicious with each other, we troll each other, we call each other names, bully each other, and it is a very destructive system. And one thing I'm loving about this new charter system is that we are all here running as non-partisans. We're not running as Democrats, we're not running as Republicans, as independents, Greens, what have you. We're all non-partisan, running on the issues. We need to return to a time when candidates went on the issues, not on how much money they could raise, they could be endorsed by, where we can actually meet with candidates, voters like you, who are taking the time out of this beautiful day when you could be out on the food market, but you're here with us, and I cannot thank you guys for showing up here. And if we can return civility back to our political discourse, so much can happen where we can actually talk about our issues. We all have 10 different agendas here, but we all agree that we need to get there somehow. And the way we do it is we actually ask for your participation, your input, because we can't really know what's going to happen unless you tell us, what do you want the new City Hall to do for you? What can we do to help you? I may not be able to give you a hand, but I can push through a lot of progressive initiatives that can become city oranges, like universal health care, universal education, universal housing. So these are all issues that a lot of cities across Europe and even countries in the European Union are already doing. Why can't we do it here in Portland? And this November, I ask you to please vote for me, Michael Trimble, as one of your top 3 candidates for City Council. Thank you.